Alaska, 1992. A young man steps into the wild. His adventure ends in tragedy. 25 years later, the shocking story of Chris McCandless remains shrouded in mystery. I'm J.J. Kelley, investigating mysteries in the remotest locations on Earth.
And we had a little bit of weather.
Conditions couldn't be a whole lot worse.
My adventures are off-road, off limits, and off the map. The Alaskan wilderness. Vast, beautiful, brutal. For a young Chris McCandless, this rugged terrain is a siren song, and it swallowed him whole. As for me, I've been obsessed with this story my entire life. It's the summer of 1990. Aspiring writer Chris McCandless graduates from Atlanta's prestigious Emory University. Instead of pursuing a law career, he donates his entire savings, $24,000, to charity. He gets in his car and heads west. Writing about his adventures along the way, the budding author adopts the name Alexander Supertramp, or simply Alex. For the next 2 years, Alex zigzags his way across the country, picking up odd jobs and seeking adventure. A small farm in South Dakota becomes his new temporary home. But eventually, his journey brings him to Alaska, where he sets off into the wild, alone with little more than a bag of rice. He survives more than 100 grueling days, living off the land, finding refuge in a rusted-out bus, and recording each day in his journal. On day 113, the journal entries end. Chris is dead. Into the Wild becomes a best-selling book and a Hollywood movie, inspiring thousands of people to seek their own adventures. Now, 25 years after his death, Chris and his unusual life are still a mystery. To find answers, I'm headed off the map to try and find the bus where Chris spent his final days. Survival expert John Schandelmeyer gives me a ride. So I'm up here and I'm following the trail of Chris McCandless. And Chris is hitchhiking on this road. He gets a ride. He's got a .22. He's got a little bag of rice, a knife, and a fishing pole.
It's quite well supplied.
You think that's enough?
Normally, in a survival school, I would give somebody a knife and a piece of wire and a book of matches, and that would be it.
Quite well prepared.
He was quite well prepared with his survival equipment. You have 10 pounds of rice, survive a long time. You're not going to eat a pound of rice a day, and you don't even need a fishing rod to catch fish, so you can build fish traps, you can build rock dams, and he had a .22. He's capable of shooting grouse. A lot of beaver in that country. Beaver makes a good meal.
The .22 is enough?
It'd be the rifle of choice because you can carry a lot of ammunition in your pocket. And the saying, when you're in the woods, if it's not in your pocket, you don't have it. You don't own it.
Plenty of food.
Plenty of food.
Plenty of ammo.
The guy wasn't prepared mentally.
What are those inadequacies?
It's an inability to deal with the unknown or the unexpected. He lived in the States. That's not the wild. It's a completely different place. And to think that he could go out and live in the woods and have no backup plan, he was asking for trouble. And without the knowledge and the ability to learn it, he shouldn't have been there.
Well, I'm not convinced he's right. John's opinion isn't uncommon here in Alaska.
This is your stop right here, actually.
This is it?
Yeah.
John, thanks for your time. Thanks for your thoughts.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I've arrived in Healy, Alaska. This is where Chris set out on foot into the wilderness along the famed Stampede Trail. My plan is to follow his route and see if I can find the famous bus where he made his home. Turns out, it's not that far at all.
There's the bus. That was easy.
How you doing? David McCarthy.
David, J.J. Kelley, what is this?
This is a replica of a bus that was made for Sean Penn's movie Into the Wild.
Are these Sean Penn's extras?
Now, these are people that are tourists that are coming up here that love to see this, and it's kind of spurred this resurgence of tourism in our area. And we brought it over here to our property, and it's become an iconic symbol for our business now. So that gives people an opportunity to see the story behind Chris McCandless' life.
Huh.
Finding Hollywood's version of Chris's bus was easy. I have a feeling locating the real one won't be. The next day, I make the short walk to the trailhead where Chris began his trek. I wonder about Chris's thoughts when he was here. The writing in his journal consists of little more than a list.
Day 1, exit Fairbanks. Day 2, fall through the ice.
Most believe that Chris fell through the partially frozen Teklanika River, trying to cross it on the second day of his odyssey. To help me get to the river, I'm meeting with expert woodsman Colby Coombs.
All right, well, let's get this pack on board and let's get going.
Up here in the front?
Yeah.
Can I drive?
Sure.
All right.
It takes Chris 2 days on foot to get to the river. Colby and I arrive in just a couple of hours.
This is the Teklanika River.
It's quite a river.
It's a glacially fed river, so it's all silty. You can't figure out how deep it is. It's icy cold, so very quickly you can lose the feeling in your feet and then get swept off your feet pretty easily, and you can drown that way.
I'm in the Alaskan backcountry, about 20 miles from civilization, investigating the tragedy of Chris McCandless, hoping to solve the mystery of how he died, and better understand who he was by retracing his footsteps. To find the famous bus where he spent his final days, I'm facing a dangerous crossing of the Teklanika River.
This looks like it's gonna basically come up to the point where it's gonna pull you away, and that whitewater looks like no joke.
If it's much above your knees and you're carrying a pack, it's pretty serious. So we'll scout for the best spot, and then we'll go over some safety concerns.
Camp tonight, ford tomorrow.
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, all right.
With darkness nearly upon us, it's too dangerous to cross the river tonight. But Colby knows just the spot to set up camp.
Wow, look at this. Welcome to Supertramp's village. This is like a pilgrimage that they set up to cross the river.
Named after Chris's alter ego, Alexander Supertramp, the camp has grown from all the backpackers who've come here attempting to reach the abandoned bus.
So there's hatchet, got an info book, you got a sleeping bag. There's even a kiddie pool, I wouldn't use that. There are bullets, there's tents set up. Huh. These pilgrims that have come here and they've made this homage to the bus, and they said, well, if worse comes to worse and the river gets high, at least you won't end up like Chris.
Yeah.
With darkness setting in, we set up camp for the night.
It seems pretty peaceful out here.
Yeah, it's super quiet. We need to just be aware of the biggest hazard out here right now is bears. We don't want them to associate us with food.
Or beef food, I guess.
Yeah, if a bear is charging you, you better start praying.
I thought the river was bad.
Yeah.
Now I got that to worry about.
In the morning, I'm up early, ready to attempt to cross the Teklanika River. At the exact place where Chris McCandless crossed in April 1992. Others who've tried haven't been so lucky. A few years ago, a young woman died at this very spot, trying to make it to the other side.
Hey, Colby.
Hey,
Morning to ya.
JJ. Have some coffee. There you go.
Thank you, sir.
How does it look?
It doesn't look any lower, I'll tell you that. And the air temperature's cold.
Suffering's part of it. We'll make it work. Let's break camp and get you across this river.
All right, let's do it.
All right, well, we're choosing this location because it's the widest. It's gonna spread the volume of water out the most. So it's gonna be consistently at a certain depth, and you're not gonna run into a deep channel. You're not gonna be able to see the bottom, so you'll use your staff to sort of gauge the depth.
It seems like the current is the real issue.
Right. So you wanna dish your pants.
Pants?
Any sort of
Right.
pants that you have are gonna start fluttering.
I lose
Yeah,
the pants.
you can put them back on afterwards.
All right. What do you think the water temp is right now?
It's probably 33 degrees. You're not gonna feel your feet.
If my feet get pulled away from me, what do I do?
Pack floats. You'd think it might sink, but it actually floats and it pushes you down. So really important to have your waist belt off.
Okay.
I'll watch you with a rope, and if your feet give out from underneath you, wait for the rope to land on you and grab onto that rope. You'll swing to shore.
Is there a point of no return? Like, if I'm feeling numb and I'm not feeling comfortable, is there a point where, hey, you reach there and you should just go for it?
Well, you're gonna be the best judge at that, but if it was me and I was beyond halfway and I felt like the depth was consistent, I would go for it.
Okay, well, thanks for taking me this far. I gotta go alone from here.
Good luck.
All right, sir. This trip for me is something I've wanted to do for a decade. The only thing standing between me and the bus now is the Teklanika. Here we go. Ah! This river is moving fast, and it's cold. There goes the feeling in my feet. There they go. Ah! Ah! That water is no joke. That was not fun at all. Can't even really talk very much because I'm losing heat. But I'm just gonna warm up for now. The bus can wait.
I set off on the final leg of my journey to try and find the famous bus. I'm told it's a full day's hike from the river and easy to find if you stay on the trail. 1 mile turns into 2. Then 4. Then 8. With nightfall nearing, it begins to rain. And I'm wondering if I've accidentally lost the trail. When finally, there it is! Deep in the Alaskan wilderness, I'm one step closer to solving the mystery of Chris McCandless.
So I spent 10 years of my life waiting for this moment. Wow. By reading Chris's story and knowing about what Chris did, it changed my life. You can see that it's just completely rusted out, beat up. And I mean, you look at the weather right now, it's piss and rain, and you can imagine that Chris came to a place like this, and it's stunning. It's absolutely gorgeous. He gets here in April, and it's freezing cold, and he wants to go further, but he sees something like this, and it offers a chance to get out of the elements. You see the back is smashed in, and you see bones and bits of animals, and you know that people come out here, and that's what this really is. It's still being used for what it was intended to be used for. It's smaller than I thought, and it's just riddled with bullet holes. People that have shot at this thing, shots in the side. Hopefully nobody was in here. I mean, right now, I haven't gone inside yet, but it looks like it's probably a lot like it was when Chris was here. We don't know a lot about Chris's journey because it's just through accounts of people that he met. The very end of his life is the part that we know the least amount because he was alone. His entire time out here, no one came. The only reason that we know just a little bit about him is because he kept this little journal where he'd put in the notes. And the notes are basically the things that he killed that day. And he took a few photos. And the most iconic photo, the one that is the most moving for me of Chris, is when he sat in this very chair just a short period of time before he left the earth.
And here, inside the bus, where Chris spent his final days, I'm witness to messages written by hundreds of travelers who've come here to pay their respect.
Travel never seems to satisfy my urge to explore. It seems to feed the sense that there's always more to discover. There's no destination, only the journey. I mean, mostly names. This is an entire museum, a wilderness museum that is off the path and managed by no one, of people who were inspired by one young man who came out here to live out his dreams and ultimately died pursuing those dreams.
The messages here are clear. For many, Chris McCandless is nothing short of legend. His unbreakable will to live life in the raw, with no money, no means, and no limits, resonates with millions of people all over the world. The evidence is all around me. To get closer to understanding Chris, my plan is to spend the night out here. After collecting some firewood, I've got company.
How you doing?
Good.
I'm JJ.
I'm Simon.
Where are you from?
I came from Connecticut.
To see the bus.
Just for the bus, yeah.
Right on.
Simon invites me to share the grouse he killed.
There is not much meat on this thing.
Yeah, it's a scrawny bird. This is about 3 bites. It's really just an appetizer.
What compelled you to come here?
Well, I really wanted to see how Chris lived out here in the bus. I've seen pictures and You know, you watch the movies, but it's just not the same as seeing it for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about a guy like Chris, a lot of people said that he was an idiot. He said that he wasn't prepared. Other people say that he was a hero and that he empowered them to live life to the fullest. What do you think of a guy like that?
Every hero is still human. You know, he made mistakes, but I'm not one to judge. I wasn't here when he was here. And so, who knows? Maybe he was dumb, or maybe he just got caught with his pants down.
You're kind of like Chris in a sense where you grew up on the East Coast and you decided to shrug it off and go up to Alaska and follow the path that Chris took to come here. Like, what made you want to leave Connecticut?
Everywhere you go, there's a town or a city and there are people, and out here you can walk for days and never see a person or a structure or a road. It's hard to really listen to what's coming out of the inside of you when all you hear is the sound coming in from the outside. This is one of those few places left where there's actually some wild in the world.
It's a place to challenge yourself, a place to find yourself.
Yeah, a place to challenge myself and give me perspective, I guess, above all else.
All right, well, it's morning time at the Magic Bus. My hiking friend has already left, and if I'm being honest, it's a little haunting to be out here alone. I'm hungry, and I want to see what Chris could find, and I want to know what this wilderness can provide.
Chris believed it could provide for him indefinitely. On the 8th day of his Alaskan odyssey, he leaves the relative comfort of the bus and heads further into the wilderness. His goal is to walk 350 miles to the edge of Alaska and the Bering Sea. His journal sums up the near impossible journey.
Day 9, weakness. Day 14, misery.
On his 31st day in the wilderness, Chris returns to the bus, hungry and weak. Imagining Chris's struggle to find food, my first instinct is to fish in the nearby streams. After several hours without a bite, it's clear that these streams are simply too shallow to support anything worth eating. Chris doesn't record catching any fish either, but he does have success with his rifle.
Day 36, porcupine, 4 squirrels, gray bird. Day 39, ptarmigan.
His kills go from small animals and birds to the biggest beast in Alaska.
Day 43, moose.
But curing the meat becomes problematic.
Day 48, maggots. Looks like disaster.
Look at this. These are moose droppings. And if you look here, you have fresh moose tracks. This is the time that you want to be dropping a moose. Chris killed his moose 2 months earlier in the height of the summer. It was too hot, and the meat ultimately went bad. He described that day as one of the worst days of his life, seeing all that meat go to waste.
By the beginning of August, Chris notes there's nothing left to shoot. The only thing to eat is vegetation. But to maintain his body's needs, he'll need to forage all day, every day. Chris also mentions eating the seeds from wild potatoes. He blames them for feeling ill.
Day 94, extremely weak. Fault of potato seed, great jeopardy.
As summer turns to fall, Chris finds less and less food.
This tiny little thing was and is a blueberry. You can see it doesn't even register next to my fingernail. It's nothing. So when Chris was out here, as summer was turning to winter, it's a law of diminishing return.
In the height of summer, Chris can barely sustain himself. But by late fall, it's absolutely impossible.
So I'm really seeing no food at all. These bushes would have been full of cranberries. They're all gone. Over there, you would have had some blueberries. They're all gone. If you're gonna forage right now, the prospect is really bleak.
As Chris's help continues to dwindle, he makes one last attempt to get back to civilization. But when he arrives at the Teklenika, it's a torrent. He's forced back to the bus.
Day 100. In weakest condition of life, death looms as serious threat. Too weak to walk out. Have literally become trapped in the wild.
On day 113, August 24th, 1992, Chris's journal ends. In his final self-portrait, emaciated but still smiling, Chris holds a message.
I have had a happy life, and thank the Lord. Goodbye, and may God bless all.
"19 days later, moose hunters find Chris's body wrapped in a sleeping bag. A note reads, "Happiness is only real when shared."
I just spent the whole day looking for fish, looking for something to hunt, looking for something to forage, anything, and I had no success.
While the conditions out here are extreme, the question remains. Did Chris die from starvation? Or did the potato seeds kill him, as some suggest? Back in civilization, there's one man who believes he has the answer.
Could those toxins, in fact, kill him?
My investigation of Chris McCandless has taken me to the backcountry of Alaska and the isolated bus where Chris lived and died. I experienced the difficult conditions he faced and witnessed the undeniable evidence of his influence. But exactly how Chris died is still not clear. Determined to discover the truth, I've arranged a meeting with a scientist back in Fairbanks who worked on Chris's autopsy. Dr. Clausen won't be able to share his new findings with me until early next week. That gives me a few days, so I'm traveling to South Dakota to try and learn who Chris really was and understand why he lived life in the extreme. Before his Alaskan odyssey, Chris came here and worked as a farmhand for Wayne Westerberg.
Chris was a guy who was very well educated, had a brilliant family, was on a trajectory to go to law school and potentially be very successful out on the East Coast. How did he fit in here?
Well, he never let anybody know that he went to college, and he didn't ever try to be bigger, better, bolder, or, stand out in any which way or form. He just was more of a well-mannered type younger guy that was having a good time with his life.
Before Chris ever stepped foot in Alaska, he made several trips to South Dakota to save money for his upcoming odyssey. He worked for Wayne doing odd jobs on the farm, from cleaning the silos to shoveling grain. A few months after Chris sets off to Alaska, Wayne gets a call. Chris has died in the wilderness. Police hand Wayne all of Chris's possessions, including 5 rolls of undeveloped film.
These are the last rolls of film that he ever took.
Yes, that's right.
It is astonishing how young Chris looks.
He's having a great time on these travels.
He's so into it. You get the sense that he's proud that he's out there doing it. I mean, look at that photo. Look at that smile. And you also look at the kills. Kill after kill after kill. There's a porcupine here, there's a ptarmigan, there's rabbits, there's squirrels. He was foraging, He was hunting. He was surviving out there. And there's the bus.
The bus was another integral part of this whole thing, that once he established a home out there, it gave him a base. Once he had that base there, then he stayed. And once he stayed too long.
And these are the last photos. Look at his face, it's sunken in. He looks emaciated. You can almost see the bones of his face protruding through.
He still looks like he's got some hope, but definitely it's taken a turn from where it started.
I mean, he's smiling, but he looks like a skeleton.
Even more chilling than these final photos is the last postcard he would ever write.
This card, dated April 27th, 1992. Greetings from Fairbanks. This is the last you shall hear from me, Wayne. It might be a very long time before I return south. If this adventure proves fatal and you don't ever hear from me again, I want you to know that you are a great man. I now walk into the wild.
Wow. That is a chilling postcard.
It was definitely moving to me. It sent a little chill down my back. Some people thought that it was a death trip. I don't believe that at all. I expected him to be here, you know, later on that fall.
Wayne might have been the best friend that Chris ever had. But if I really want to understand who Chris was, my next interview is even more significant. I traveled to Virginia Beach
It's so nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
to meet Chris's parents.
What kind of a kid was Chris, Billy?
He was charming, good-looking, smart, and a real loving boy.
He was daring, resourceful. He was always a trailblazer. I think that's a key thing here. But he was also resolute. So when he decided that he was going to go off and do something,
There was no stopping him.
yeah, there was no stopping him.
If I could look at it as not as a parent, it might have been kind of exciting and say, wow, boy, you know, that's pretty hot. You taking off and doing that all by yourself, but not for a parent.
How do you hope that Chris is remembered? There have been various claims made that, you know, he went into the Alaskan wilderness and maybe he wasn't prepared and then he got in a little over his head. And others say, you know, he's inspired me to travel and to do more.
Let's look at the worst of it. He didn't have an adequate map when he went up, you know, on the Stampede Trail. Because not far up the river that he couldn't cross is a crossing. It's a cable with a car on it that you have to pull across. But it's there.
But you could cross.
And it's on the map.
Safely.
So in answer, he was resourceful and did prepare a lot of the things that he needed, like killing game. But you could look at it and say that he was not as careful as one might want to be.
It's shocking to learn that had Chris simply taken along a map of the Stampede Trail, he would have likely made it back to civilization. You have to wonder if it was an impulsive mistake or intentional and just part of the adventure. And it's not the only time he does this. Just months before his Alaskan Odyssey, he embarks without a map, and again with little more than a bag of rice on a nearly fatal trip down one of the world's most dangerous rivers. My investigation of Chris McCandless first brought me to Alaska, where I experienced the infamous bus where he spent his final days. But exactly how he died, starvation or poisonous potato seeds, is still a question I'm determined to answer. But first, I've come to Arizona because only months before Chris sets off on his final Alaskan adventure, he embarks from here on a dangerous trip down the Colorado River, almost getting himself killed. I want to know why he did it and how he survived. River expert Danny Gervais might have some answers.
I'm following in the footsteps of Chris McCandless. Chris came down this river with just a small bag of rice. and he survived for 400 miles. Like, I see there's a river party over there. How many miles would they be going down?
They're gonna go down 26 miles. They'll be out for about 2 weeks, and they have everything from steaks, lobsters, water, a lot more than just a standard bag of rice. That's pretty rugged.
That's extreme, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get on the boat and let's head up.
All right, let's get going. You can really feel the epic passage of time here.
I've lived through my entire life and it doesn't get old.
Yeah.
It still takes my breath away. You have cliffs that are 3 to 4 times the size of the Empire State Building surrounding water that goes down 80 feet.
I would imagine that surviving here would be nearly impossible. I'm not seeing many signs of life.
It really is. Though temperatures out here in the summertime can reach over 124 degrees.
So if you don't know what you're doing, surviving out here is not easy.
This place has claimed a lot of lives.
Chris's plan is to canoe 400 miles down the Colorado River. He starts here on the western edge of Arizona, near the Grand Canyon. His goal is to cross into Mexico and spill out into the Gulf of California. A trip that will take up to 3 months.
So there are fish here, though, in the river. If you know what you're doing, if you know how to catch fish, you can survive.
If you can catch fish or even trap fish, you can survive. But if you don't know how to fish, it's going to be extremely difficult to survive any longer than 3 or 4 days.
How many fish am I going to have to catch per day to sustain the calories that I need to survive?
If you're paddling down this river system and all you have is a bag of rice, you're going to need to catch 3 or 4 decent-sized fish in order to maintain that protein intake. Paddling this river all day long, you're going to burn through that in an hour.
Get some fish. How easy is it to survive in a place like this for somebody who's coming in green, really with no formal training?
It's not forgiving at all. It would be nearly impossible for someone to just come out here on a whim. Everything out here is wild still.
I want to paddle alone and experience the river as Chris had.
The Colorado River is big, it's beautiful, it's deep, and it's cold. And it's challenging, no doubt. Going 400 miles down this and having to catch your own food would be extremely difficult, and if not impossible for most people.
Chris begins his journey on November 2nd, 1990, and survives 72 days on the river. Pushed to the brink of starvation, Chris records that his alter ego, Alex, can go no further.
Finally, through extreme effort and much cursing, he manages to beach the canoe on a jetty and collapse, exhausted on the sand.
Chris's mission is doomed from the start. There's simply no navigable outlet from the Colorado River to the ocean, making the passage impossible. But Chris's determination is simply remarkable.
The main reason that I was extremely excited about Chris McCandless' story is because I can relate to what he did. When I was younger, I paddled for 1,400 miles from Alaska to Seattle in kayaks that I built out of wood. When we did it, we had 4,000 calories a day of pre-made, ready-made food. And it was really about paddling from point A to point B. To think about doing it where you're catching and surviving off everything that you eat, I mean, I couldn't have done it. I could not have done it. I would have died.
In 1990, the Colorado River nearly kills Chris, but only months later, he sets off on his final adventure in Alaska. For 25 years, the true cause of his death has been fiercely debated. Now, I'm meeting with the scientist who aided in Chris's autopsy, who believes he has the answer, once and for all. Following in the footsteps of Chris McCandless, I've learned a lot about his life. But one question remains. How did he die? I've returned to Fairbanks, Alaska, to meet botanist Tom Clausen, who provided data to the original autopsy.
All right, Tom, so you spent years looking at what killed Chris. What are some of the most common theories that are out there right now?
I would say there's two theories. It's either strictly starvation or starvation with toxin contributing to it.
So initially in the book, they thought it was poisoning.
There's been a lot of theories along that line. The wrong plant was chosen.
A recent discovery has proven that the potato seeds that made Chris ill contain a dangerous substance called cannabinine.
Cannabinine is an amino acid, and it's used by the plant as a deterrent for insects.
So it's a defense system by the plant, basically saying, you know, don't eat my seeds right now.
That's what most people would say, yes.
Could those toxins, in fact, kill him?
Yes, absolutely.
So Tom, these seeds are tiny, but you'd need a mountain of these seeds just to get a mouthful.
Yeah, I estimated that for the toxic effects, you would need about 1.5 pounds of these seeds a day. There's no way I could eat 1.5 pounds of these seeds, and collecting that would be phenomenal.
So even though the seeds that contain cannabinine could have killed Chris, it's highly unlikely that he could have collected and eaten enough of them.
So what is your theory? What killed Chris?
Chris died of starvation. Basically, when his body was found, it weighed 68 pounds. Looking at the foods he ate in his diary, he averaged about a squirrel a day. That would be 340 calories.
Human body needs how much a day?
I would say a good 2,000.
2,000 minimum, and he's getting just over 300.
He would be lucky if he got 4 ounces off of a squirrel.
After 25 years, we can now close the books on how Chris McCandless died. It wasn't poisonous berries or toxic potato seeds, and it most definitely wasn't suicide. The sad truth is that Chris simply withered away and died of starvation. Many believe he was a reckless fool. His own parents acknowledged that had Chris simply taken along a map, he'd likely be alive today. Others call Chris a hero and have been inspired by his story to pave their own adventures. So which is he? At the end of my journey, I believe Chris was neither a hero nor a fool. He was merely young. He dove headfirst into his quest, not fully prepared for what lay ahead, or for the ultimate price that he would have to pay.